What's going on, everybody? Fedor here from 3D Print SOS. Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we are going to be going over these two machines. We have the Flashforge AD5X and the AnyCubic S1 Combo. Both of these machines are priced pretty aggressively to try to be your first multicolor machine, and that's probably one of my favorite segments currently in 3D printing. So I'm really excited about showcasing both of these machines to you. Now, both of these machines were sent to me by the manufacturer, Flashforge and AnyCubic. I do not take any money or any guidelines of what I need to print or do with these machines. I take them, I use them as if they were mine. I show you guys the print examples and all projects that I've done while I had these things, and then I make sure I write down all the cons and all the pros of these machines, because we all know if you can get through the cons of these machines, then you're definitely going to like the pros. So that's the point of this video. We're going to go over all of those things. I'm going to show you some print examples, and hopefully if you are in the market for one of these two machines, well, then by the end of this video you'll probably have a better idea whether you want one of these things or not. As always, all the links for everything that I'm going to showcase here are going to be in the description down below. They are going to be affiliate links, so I do get a tiny kickback for those links, but they don't cost you anything. They're just there for your convenience if you're interested in one of these machines. All right, without delaying the video any further, let's get right into the important stuff, the cons. Let's go. All right, so right off the bat, let's go ahead and talk about the AnyCubic. So my first thing that I have on the list here is some spools grind the edges of the Ace Pro. The Ace Pro is this AMS, CFS, IFS system. This is the management for multi-filament here. And if we open up, you can kind of see what's going on here. So I do have a variety of different spools in here, and I've tested a whole bunch of different spools in the system here. And I'm finding that some of the older ones, especially spools like this, where they might have been around for a little while, or they're not quite perfect, they're skewed, they will rub the edges on the inside of the system, and it might not be able to have the strength to wind these all the way back, sometimes even throwing an error where you can just come up, kind of do it manually, help it along, and then it works. I've definitely had some prints stop because of that specifically, and simply changing the spool to something a little bit different has completely alleviated that situation. Now, with that said, I did try those same problematic spools in the CFS and the AMS units that I also have here, and I did not run into some of those problems. So it seems like the Ace Pro is lacking a little bit in torque, and it can't quite pull through some of those problems. But in its defense, like I said, it has some pretty good AI detection, and it did notice those things, warning you, giving you a notification, so on and so forth. But I do notice that problem more so with the Ace Pro than any of the other management systems that I have here in the studio. Next on the list is it does not come with a hardened nozzle or gears, so you're not going to be printing fancy filaments that have glass fiber or carbon fiber, although this machine should technically be able to do it with some upgrades. Now, in its defense, the AD5X also has some cloudy specifications and information about their hot end and gearing as well. It did say at one point that it did have a hardened nozzle. I think some of that might have changed, so it's kind of unclear 100% as to what this machine has, but I know that this machine, you're not printing any abrasives, so just stick to your regular PLA, PDG, TPU, ABS. This thing can go kind of hot, and it's enclosed, so you can have a variety of filaments with this thing, just not abrasives. Next up is the PTFE tube on top of the tool head rubs and has an extreme angle. So you can't quite see it here, but I'll be sure to play a clip of what I'm talking about. So the PTFE tube that enters the top of the tool head has such an extreme angle on it that over the time that I've had it, which is about a month or so, my PTFE tube now has a pretty much permanent crease and almost a hole in it just from rubbing left and right and from doing its printing. And the fact that it's touching that top of the tool head there just means that AnyCubic didn't quite catch that in testing and released it. It needs to have some kind of protection on it or something along those lines, or just less of an angle. But there's also some printable options for that. Obviously, the community jumps on these types of fixes pretty quickly, so you can print a little piece that just kind of takes it away from that edge and stops the tool head from cutting into your PTFE tube. Like I said, I already have some damage on my PTFE tube, and it's something that you might have to monitor for sure with this. Next up is that the machine has 2 power cords, and the reason for that is that this Ace Pro filament management system here can actually heat while printing. So it's actually a dryer slash heater and also an AMS unit, which is fantastic. But because of that, it needs a little bit more power, so it has its own power cord. You got to keep that in mind when you're thinking about where to put this thing. Not only is the printer going to have a cord, but also the AMS unit. So you just got to know that it's going to take up a whole outlet, or you're going to be putting into a splitter or a power strip, something along those lines, but important to know. And finally, a little quirk here is that the bed alignment tabs that are on the back of the bed, which help you align your bed when you're putting it back on, are just a little bit too short. And I've caught myself occasionally putting it in kind of quickly, not aligning the right one or the left one. And what happens is your bed kind of jumps up on top of one of those. And if you're not careful, or you've turned off automatic bed leveling before each print, you might run into some Z offset issues. I've caught it a couple times, and I've also caught it not being aligned, but being fixed by the bed mesh before the print. So although the machine is smart enough to kind of catch it, just know that a little bit, if those things were a little bit taller, that wouldn't even be an issue. So something that, once again, AnyCubic could have caught in their QA when they were testing this machine, but seems like that kind of slipped between the cracks. It's a little bit easy. Won't be too much of a problem now that maybe you saw this video and you notice, but I know it happened to me a couple of times, and well, I'm warning you. Today's video is sponsored by PCBWAY. They're an amazing resource for anything 3D printed, injection molded, CNC machining. The list goes on and on and on. Check out PCBWAY.com for an amazing and extensive list of resources and services that they provide, and also a community tab where you can check out other projects by other makers, and you can purchase the projects and everything that you need for them right there. Not just PCBs. The list goes on and on with everything they do, and I guarantee you, just like I was surprised, you will be surprised by how reasonable the pricing is. So check out PCBWAY, and thank you, PCBWAY, for sponsoring this video. But that's all the cons for this machine. Let's jump right into the Flashforge AD5X cons. So the first one on here is that there's no camera for monitoring. And when you're getting a machine like this, especially this complex with all these systems on it, and the fact that it has a monitoring built in into its app, whether you're in the slicer or on your phone, the fact that it doesn't come with the camera just is kind of a little bit of a bummer. That means if you're away, you can see if it's still printing or not, but you can't see if it's actually printing or not. You can just know if the machine is essentially running or not. So a little bit of a con. Would definitely wish it came with a camera. It has a relatively small build area. We are definitely getting used to machines becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. This one is 250. This one is just under that, 225 or 220. A pretty traditional 3D printer size. But when I'm using this machine, I'm definitely finding myself just earning for just a little bit more space. And this one kind of scratches that itch. So that's a little bit of a con, is that this is a small and really compact machine. I guess that could be a pro for some folks. Some of the spools rub the IFS unit. You can't quite see it here, but these two top spools, I believe this is 1 and 4. If your spool is somewhat large, you will be rubbing the edge of the unit, and I've learned that if I kind of tilt it just like this, you can kind of click it out of its own little spot. It stops doing that. I think the fix for this is just to lift this thing just a little bit higher. I'm sure there's already printable adapters for that. And once again, they probably tested this exclusively with their own filaments, or some high-end filaments where the spools might be a little bit smaller in diameter, something along those lines. But I definitely have a bunch of spools that kind of rub just a little bit on the bottom of the IFS. Hasn't hindered it too much, but it's noticeable. And who wants to have friction between a printer part and their spool? So just something to look out for. You have to pay extra or DIY and print your own enclosure. So obviously this machine, although it does cost a little bit more because of this, this one is all enclosed. This machine is somewhat bare bones. It is open air. It doesn't have any doors or acrylic on the side or anything like that. Only the bottom and the back are enclosed, and it is kind of like a skeletonized printer. And because of that, they have a DIY kit where you can purchase. They give you some plexiglass, and you can print your own enclosure. I know not everybody is going to want to do that, however, so I'm putting this as a con that it doesn't come with it. But I guess you can do it if you really wanted to. Just a bit of a bummer that it's open like that, which limits you to a bunch of the, limits you to the filament that you can print on this particular machine. You can't move the IFS system unlike a traditional box. So the IFS here is basically on the right side of the machine. That's where the spool holders are. That's where the mount to this is. You can't flip it to the other side. And that's just a little bit of a bummer, because it would be really nice to be able to move this depending on your particular setup. Maybe you want this thing, maybe the way that this fits in your room, you want more space on this side. Maybe you won't be able to reach, the spools from whatever your setup is. It is a bit more limiting than the traditional setup. Although because of that, you don't have, the box on top or on the sides. This thing's mounted all together. It's a little bit more compact. Just a bummer that you can't move it. For example, if I didn't have enough space to go this high with this particular machine, I could just put this box to the side of it, behind it, underneath of it, whatever it is. It's up to me where this thing sits, and the PTFE tubes kind of take care of the rest, whereas this is hard mounted on the side, and just a little bit of a bummer that I can't flip-flop this thing on the other side. I think that would be pretty nice. And finally is that the specs have been changing on their site. The first one that was really noticeable was that when they were first marketing this machine, they were saying that this could print multicolor TPU, and I tested that early on with this machine when I first unboxed it for a big project as well, and I was able to print multicolor TPU on this machine. But if you guys notice, that part is gone from their marketing, and the same with the nozzle material and the gearing material. It's kind of a loose-goose information. If you start looking elsewhere, you'll find that it is. Some people say that it's not. It's just not very clear, and it's been interesting to see this product evolve. I know that since I personally have had this, and I've had this one for a while now, the spool holders have gotten significantly better. The hot end has gotten completely revamped. So the machine that you are getting is the best version of itself. There's also been a ton of firmware updates for this particular machine. So I guess it is good that it is evolving, but in one way, when I was set on the specs and knew what they were, going back to the site and kind of learning that, hey, these things have changed, has been a kind of an interesting little plot twist. So one of the cons that I have there is that the specs have just been changing for the machine over time. And I know that could be a good thing, but some things were a bad thing. Just make it a little bit more confusing as to what you're buying, because the information can be kind of all over the place. All right, that's enough of the cons. Let's talk about what these things are really good at with the pros. Let's go. All right, let's talk about the pros. This time, let's start with the Flashforge AD5X. All right, so the first on my list is that it has a really smart design on the tool head and the IFS. I do think that this is an extremely unique part of this system. The IFS specifically, the fact that this part is so compact, it makes you really think of where else can this company put this system on? Can they make this standalone for other machines? So on and so forth. I think this is a really smart design. It is not overly done. It doesn't have a big box that you're stuck in. It has this fluid little chamber that I can feel growing with the company as they find different ways to use this. And the same with the tool head. The fact that the tool head comes apart so easily without any tools. You can completely replace everything in seconds. It has these little pins for the fan on the cover that kind of come off with it. It is just brilliant design. It is extremely clean and not overdone and not over-engineered, which is really nice. And I think that speaks for the machine's simplicity and also reflects that on the price of what Flashforge is aggressively pricing this machine at, as you can see in the links there. It is very simple and easy to work on and maintain. Because of its open frame and nature, you can get to everything, you can see everything. All of the screws and bolts are external, so taking it apart for any reason to make an adjustment, to clean something, makes it very, very easy and simple. This is one of those machines that is definitely not overwhelming. It doesn't seem like it would be difficult at first sight, which makes it really easy to jump into as a first machine or second machine, so on and so forth. And if you have a bunch of these things and kind of like a farm situation, that also makes it easier, as you know, if something goes wrong, you'll be able to resolve that problem quickly or faster because of the simplicity of this machine, and get this thing back, you know, into working shape. So there's definitely something to be said about just the simplicity and the design of this particular machine. It's fantastic. The next pro was also mentioned in the cons. It's the upgradable / do-it-yourself enclosure. I know some people are actually going to prefer this because you get to customize your machine, and anytime you get to customize and choose you know, your own parts and your own colors and your own filament for a machine, it definitely brings you closer to it. You feel like it's yours because you're customizing it, and I totally understand that aspect of it. And the enclosure isn't very expensive because you're just buying essentially some of the panels, and then you're printing the rest. And there's actually a whole bunch of themed options available for you. So if you wanted to choose one of their themes, which are a little bit funky and outlandish, but they are cool, I guess, right, and very unique, you can get this thing enclosed and make it look really nice and make it your own. But most importantly, when this thing gets enclosed, it gives you more options for more filaments and more things that you can print and make with it. So it's interesting that this thing comes naked at a really bottom dollar, and that gives you the ability to kind of grow as you go, and you don't have to pay that large sum up front to get your machine already enclosed if you are on a budget. So that's specifically what they're doing with this machine, is giving you a chance to get your foot in the door and get your feet wet with this particular machine. I kind of like that. Going right back on top of that with the do-it-yourself mods, there already is a great community with a bunch of different little modifications, especially because this machine was earlier not multicolor, as in the AD5M, and now it's the AD5X. So there's definitely community modifications, a bunch of them for this one, more so than I see for the other machine with this one. So it seems like there's a lot of people interested in making the Flashforge a little bit more of their own, and that's really fun to see as well. And it's nice to have a community when you're getting yourself into a 3D printer, just knowing that there's people out there that are already creative and fixing things and making them better, so on and so forth. This one definitely has that going for it. And finally, the price is just aggressively low. I believe at the time I'm filming this, it is $370, which is an incredible thing for a Core XY, really fast machine that has 4-color capability. I think that's really just a great price point, and definitely one that you should consider if you're on a tight budget for a 3D printer. And this one should definitely you know, itch that scratch, that's for sure. Aggressively priced low. That's good. It's good stuff. All right, next, let's move on to the S1 and the Ace. So fully enclosed with a premium look. Obviously, guys, if you step back and take a look at this thing, it looks like other $1,500, $2,000 machines. It's meant to look like that, and it looks really good. The major benefit of this is not just looks, obviously. It's the fact that it's completely enclosed, and that gives you the ability to print higher temperature filaments that are better off in a chamber, things like ABS, ASA, so on and so forth. So right off the bat, if you needed to print those materials, this machine would become a lot less of an option right out of the box, and this one would, you know, be the one to go for in that particular instance. So if you are looking for slightly more engineering grade materials or things that need to be outside, you are looking at an enclosed machine like this S1 Pro. You can easily expand the multicolor on this machine with another Ace Pro. I believe the max currently is 2 of these, so it can do 8 colors. I have 4 here, but you'd be able to do another one and put it on both on the sides. There's racks that you can make or purchase that stack these things on top of each other. Something you can't do with the AD5X, at least at the moment, is, you know, have more than 4 colors available on your machine. So that's definitely a huge pro for the S1. It can do a unique thing where the Ace Pro can heat while printing. Now, there's other filament management systems that can heat, but they can't do it while printing. And then there's also aftermarket that you'd have to buy to convert your filament management systems to be able to heat while printing. But this one comes right out of the box like that. There's a heater in here. It lets you print and lets you heat, and I think that's fantastic, and I think all of them should technically do that. Now, this one doesn't get super hot, so you're not going to be like drying your nylons in here, but if you have some wet PETG, this thing will totally get toasty and dry that out, and most importantly, keep your filament dry. If you might have a dedicated dryer, something more, a little bit more industrial, more powerful, then putting it into here with some desiccant is definitely going to keep these 4 spools, at least while they're sitting here, super dry, which I really, really like. That's a huge, huge plus for the S1 here. It has a pretty good AI print monitoring system. Unlike the Flashforge, because this has a camera, it has some AI tools. It has a pretty decent application for your phone, and also through the slicer and the monitoring through there. It can actually handle quite a bit. I've had a couple of failures actually on both machines, nothing out of the ordinary that doesn't happen on every 3D printer, but this machine would send you you know, a notification to your phone that there's something wrong, and you come down or up wherever you keep this machine and fix it. And I really like that. I think the AI system, at least for when I was using this machine for some projects, worked really well. This machine also fits the bamboo print beds. So if you have a P1P or a P1S or an X1C, whatever it might be, and you have a collection of those beds, they fit right on here. The reason why that's important is because there's already a massive aftermarket for those beds on AliExpress, on Amazon. They're becoming really inexpensive. And if you have them or want some cool ones, like with cool effects, you can just throw them in this machine. They're readily available all over the place, and I have used them in testing. You'll see in the print section of the video, and they work perfectly fine. So right off the bat, you have support for a whole bunch of different print beds on this machine because of its print bed size there. So that's pretty good. The hot end can reach 320 Celsius, and that is unique between these two machines, and that is actually pretty high, which means the temperature is not going to be something that you'll be worried about as you gain experience with this machine, as you start printing more demanding filaments like nylons, maybe polycarbonates, so on and so forth. I know there's some new PPA materials that this would be perfect for. 320 is actually plenty to be able to print the majority of pretty high-end filaments out there. So huge kudos for the AnyCubic team for getting their hot end to print above 300. I think that's pretty good. It has a great UI and screen quality. I was actually really impressed by this. It does feel like a higher-end phone, not some cheapo screens that are kind of mushy and require a big press. It feels really premium, and the reason why that's important is that's one of the things that you're going to be using on a daily basis with the machine. And if that was just not a good experience, not a good user interface or bad quality, it would kind of diminish the feeling of having this awesome thing, right? But that makes it's premium. You can adjust the angle of it. It feels really good, and most importantly, the UI doesn't have a bunch of weird things that you would question. It feels good. I think they did a great job on the user interface and a great job choosing that particular screen for this machine. All right, those were the pros and the cons. Why don't we get a little bit closer to the table and go over some of the projects and prints that I did using these machines so you can see actual results of the plastic that these things have spewed out of them. All right, let's get to the table and let's check out those prints. All right, so let's get into the printed parts. I do want to say real quick that I did do some other projects that aren't here any longer. For example, on both machines, I printed a very large V8 style cooler that I gave as a gift, and both machines did fantastic on it. That was in a video that I did recently, as well as the 85X was used to print some multicolored TPU for a gaming table project that I did, which was also a video before that. Both came out great. Both were really fun. So let's go over some of the shared projects that I did. One was this little MiU A30, this little gaming device here. I printed this awesome TPU case on the 85X, and this material is kind of an aero material, and what it means is it foams when it comes out, and still did a great job with it. As you can see, it's super flexible, as well as this front case that you could see with the carbon fiber texture on it. That was printed on the AnyCubic machine in a sparkling PLA, and the texture that you see, the carbon fiber texture, that actually came off of a bamboo build plate because those fit on the S1's build area. So a little joint project here to make this little MiU A30 gaming console a little bit more fun and better. And I would say both machines did fantastic in what they printed. I want to say specifically the S1 did a really accurate job with this, and I didn't see any single issue at all while trying to fit this into a pretty tight space. So cool little projects, cool materials, cool effects on both of them, make this thing just a little bit more fun. So that's the first one that I have as an example here. The next one is actually just a fun way to show a date in your for sale photos, and that goes along with the theme of these retro handhelds. This is obviously modeled after an original Game Boy, and as you can see, I have my logo there. And what this was all printed, by the way, on the S1 in multicolor. This is definitely four different colors here. We got grays, black, we have this nice purple, and this very light gray for the body. And then on the 85X, I did these multicolor cubes, and this is how you set the dates. For example, these things are the month. You would pick it, so let's just pick a random one. How about July? We can put those on the bottom or the top. We can pick the dates and put those in just like that. And when you have this in a photo, you have the date and your name on it. Just an easy way to sell stuff online, just to make it a little bit more authentic and to prove that it was you. But both machines, I think, did a fantastic job with printing these things in multicolor. Going a little bit further with multicolor, I went ahead and printed my logo out twice here. This on the right is the 85X, this is the AnyCubic, and as you can see, the performance is actually quite close. I would say that if I was really nitpicking all the layers and the minor imperfections, I would pick the 85X in the multicolor performance. It is just a hair smoother and better, but I wouldn't be able to really tell if you just handed me these things and asked me which machine did what. You can kind of see just a little bit of a difference in approach, the way that some of the things are handled. So I would say I would give it to the 85X in terms of sharpness, but both machines did pretty good, as you can see here. Now, let's go right into the benchy performance. On the right, once again, 85X. On the left is the S1. So as you can see, just by glance, right off the bat, is the benchies are really great. The only real difference you can see is that the S1 has a little bit of a rippling in some spots here. Let's see if I can catch the light right over here on the bow, and you can see a little bit of a rippling right over here shining in the light there. And the 85X does not have that. It's actually quite perfect. The only thing you can see is that the filament was printing a little bit faster, and the filament here is a little bit more matte. It lost its shine, and that usually happens when you're out printing the filament you're using. So I couldn't find any more imperfections on this thing. It's pretty close. You can even read the 3D Benchy hashtag on the back, which is impressive. So very nice here. To test this a little bit further, I took another filament. I went ahead and recalibrated the machine, and I printed it again. And as you can see, even though this is a different filament, a completely different color, it printed exactly the same, with the same exact slight artifacts here and there as the red one. So at least I can repeat this, and I can say that it is the machine and not just the filament or something along those lines, or the model, whatever it might be. With that said, like I said, I still think this is a fantastic benchy. There's no stringing, there's no gaps. It has a really good cooling for what it was doing. So yeah, just a little bit of a surface finish, as you can see right here, probably can be tuned out with a little bit of help from the slicer and whatnot. So there you go, that is the benchy performance. All right, next up, we'll go into these really cool little tests that are Clock Spring 3D's torture toaster. And this tests a whole bunch of different things. One, let's start on the outside. So the surface finish. I do have one on the other machine, same filament as well. And just like the benchies, as you can kind of see here, the outer, I guess, skin is just a little bit smoother on the AD5X than the S1. Just a little bit more accurate. Other than that, it'd be really hard to tell. You can see there's like a little imperfection right here on the corner there. Just some little things that make the S1 just a hair underperform when you're comparing these two directly. No stringing on either one. Nothing in the toast there. It comes out really easily. Let's go ahead and open this side on both of them to check. This side is the overhang side. And both machines, I would say, did equally well here. I don't see anything that'll make one worse than the other. The only thing that's noticeable is, you can see right over here, is just the surface area on the very outside wall is the same as all the other prints, essentially. There's just a little bit less accuracy, maybe a little bit more speed in the outer shells stock on the S1. If you slow that down, I bet the performance there would go up. But this one is probably the best I could have asked for from the AD5X. Let's go to the other side. On this side, we have some slides to check. So this is clearances, and as you can see here, we can move the 0.5, the 0.4 is rather loose actually, the 0.3, and the 0.2, which is really, really high performance. The 0.1 is fused. I actually don't think I've tested a single machine that I've had here. This is machine 78 that could move 0.1, but 0.2 is somewhat rare. This machine, the AD5X, did it great. Let's go over to the S1 and see if it can match the performance. We can move the 5, we can move the 4, we can move the 3, and the 2 is fused. Like a lot of other machines, I wouldn't necessarily count this against it, but I have a feeling that if the surface finish on the outside was tuned a little bit better, I have a feeling this would be movable as well. I have a feeling that if I try any harder, this is just gonna snap. I would still, like I said, with that result, still consider this a pretty good outcome. I would just say that this machine, the AD5X, kind of edged it out in this direct head-to-head comparison. So outside of those kind of tests, just to go back to the projects, these things are a craze right now. These are called the Labubu's. I'm not quite sure what the deal is with them, but my daughter saw them and thought they were cute, so I decided to print them for her. This one on the right was printed on the AD5X. This one on the left was printed on the S1, and they are so close I couldn't even tell a difference between them. Yes, the filament isn't exactly the same. This is PLA, but this is kind of like a shiny, glossy, sparkly PLA, and this one is a silk. I would say the surface finish on both of them is incredible. The surface finish on the other filaments is so close, there's no way to be able to tell that one machine did it over another. I think that if you're using these things for projects, all the little tests that show you the little nitpicky things don't matter as much. As you can see in the final products of all of these kind of join tests, and that's why I thought it was important to not only try to do direct comparisons like that, but also just use them for 3D print stuff, for things that you would be using and printing every day. So there you go. That is the printed stuff, the print results. I don't think you can go wrong with these machines. But before I tell you that 100%, let's head back on up and talk about some of the firmware issues and the conclusion. Let's go. All right, so before we wrap it up, one thing I do want to mention is the firmware on both of these machines derives itself from Clipper. They're forked off of Clipper, which you guys are all very familiar with, I'm assuming. But essentially, one of the most important things about Clipper is that it's open source, and if you're using the project, your firmware now has to be open source as well. And I don't think a lot of manufacturers currently that are making 3D printers that are based on Clipper are, for whatever reason, following that. Some tend to use an excuse of, oh, we're trying to make sure that it's problem-free, and then we'll release it when we're later, at a later date when we're ready, things along those lines. That's at least what I've heard from other manufacturers as well. I'm not saying that that's the case here, but I know that both of these manufacturers call the OS something else, even though it derived from Clipper. And so because they are considered their own, they're not necessarily making it fully open source and available to the public like it should be technically based on the rules, at least in the United States. Now, there are manufacturers like Creality, for example, where they have released products that were based on Clipper, named with their own OS, and then later have released them to be open source and rooted and given us access, all that fun stuff. And it becomes a lot less of an issue then. I'm not sure either of these manufacturers have done that, and that's why I want to press that situation, because I don't think that this should become the standard way of using an open source firmware, standing on the shoulders of giants, essentially making a bunch of money, and then not really ever giving back to that same community. So definitely want to mention it. I do want to also say that at the moment, you can get your regular open Clipper, or let's just say less custom Clipper versions on both of these machines. Now, if you're interested in doing that, for example, gaining access to fluid, mainsail front ends, or just being able to use different slicers however you want, for example, Orca slicer on both of them, which is definitely way better than opening a single slicer here and a different slicer there, figuring it all in a bunch of tabs. Opening just one with different projects in it, selecting your machine is definitely better. So if you want to do that on the AD5X, search for Zmod. That will get you Clipper on this, at least the less modified version of Clipper on this machine. And for the S1, search for Wrinkles. Both are fantastic projects. Both have communities. Both have support revolving around them. Also, mentioning support is important, because I have noticed that if you are going to get support for either of these machines, they're going to not support third-party firmware, although those firmwares are more like first-party than they are their own. Anyway, it's this loose situation there. So just, if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, that's why I wanted to bring this up. I actually don't think this is going to matter to a lot of people, but I know to some it is going to rub them the wrong way, especially if you didn't know and then you got one of these things and then now you know. So Zmod for AD5X, Wrinkles for the S1, and that will allow you to use all sorts of different slicers, or whichever one you want to use anyway, just outside of their own little ecosystems, which, for their own, in their defense, they do have their own little ecosystems starting to develop, and they are pretty easy to use if you're just getting into 3D printing and you want to use just one system. So that's firmware. So let's talk about the conclusion. I do think, honestly, and I've mentioned this already before, I don't think you're going to go wrong with either of these machines. The S1 is definitely more expensive, but that's because its feature set is definitely richer and larger, and the machine is larger itself than the AD5X. Although the importance of the AD5X, I don't want to understate. I think that the build quality, the simplicity of it, and its price goes a really long way. In some cases on sales, you could even get two of these for maybe potentially one of these if it wasn't on sale. So that's kind of important to know. But if you are looking for a machine that you don't want to do any DIY for, if you want it to be a little bit more traditional, if you want the ability to heat or maintain dryness in your filament in an enclosure like this, this is just better if that's your aim. And if you want the simplicity, if you're mostly going to be printing in a PLA, TPU, PETG, this is a no-brainer for this price, especially, like I said, because it has this following, it has this community, it has these things that you can do to it if you want to customize it, whatever it might be. You're definitely not going to be mad at yourself for getting one of these, especially because of its print performance. If you guys saw by the printing that the machines actually did, this one just edges out the S1 just a little bit, with just less imperfections and just slightly better surface quality on the edges of prints. Now, with that said, you can tune those things out, especially once you get your feet wet in 3D printing. Keep going as you learn how to make a profile for each of your filaments, and if you do get access to Clipper, you will get more advanced tuning opportunities, and you can tune those things out. But right out of the box, at least between these two examples, if you're just looking at the prints that I did, I would say that the AD5X just edged it out by just one single notch. But the fit and finish and the overall product is definitely going to the S1. So there you go, guys. That's going to be it for me. Hopefully that helped you guys get a little bit further in your buyer's journey. If you are interested in any of these machines, affiliate links down below as always. I'm also going to include both discounts that both companies have given exclusively to us for this channel, so that is all going to be down there. You're also going to find the Patreon for this channel, as well as a totally free Discord channel. You can become a YouTube member. You're going to get all these videos just like this one early if you're a YouTube member or a Patreon member. Of course, you get a chance to talk to me directly through those avenues as well. And last but not least, you can head on over to right over here, and that will take you to 3dprintsos.com, where you can grab yourself some pretty cool merch. All this was designed by me, and just a cool way for me to be able to get you something physical instead of just something virtual if you would like to support the channel. That's 3dprintsos.com. All right, guys, that's all for me for today. Let me know in the comments what you feel about both of these machines, or maybe which one you want to see next. Maybe you saw something in the back of the studio that's interesting. Let me know. Love to chat. All right, see you all in the comments. Later.